Oh yeah, oh yeah. Are we live? Yeah, buddy. What's good? Happy Wednesday. What's happening? Good morning. What's good? Yeah, buddy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's going on? Welcome to a fine Wednesday edition. BS with B Hannas. I'm back on a Wednesday. Perpetually, I'm back. But it's a better Wednesday than last week because there's no roofers here. So I can actually come out and talk to y'all for a couple minutes. You know what I mean? You know what it is. BS with B Hannas, live on YouTube with me. I call myself Nikki B Hannas. That's Nikki B Hannas. Not quite like Johnny B Good, but something like that. Yeah, man, I like to wake up and ideally take a nice walk, read some good stuff, come out here, talk to the people, go lift some weights. It's Wednesday. Means I'm doing legs today. Maybe I'll try squatting a little bit, just a couple reps. My back still ain't right, man. It still ain't right, but it's better. It's better than it was by a lot. But, I'd like to come out here and talk about what I think's interesting, what's going on. Sometimes talk about what I'm doing. Monday, I like to zoom in, just straight up what's going on in the brain. And we'll zoom out a little bit on a Wednesday, looking at what's going on in the world and our immediate surroundings. People are always spiraling about the news. And ever since I kind of tuned out, once I tuned out of the news and constantly being on the drip of media and what's the next move? What's BB gonna do? What's Trump gonna do? Gas prices, this, oil reserves, that. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, best thing, not maybe not the best thing. I think I had to go through it. I had to go through the obsession period to be pretty okay with not really caring too much. Well, don't you know what happens out there? Yeah, I know, I get it. But it won't affect me until it does. Otherwise, it only affects me theoretically. And if I'm theoretically thinking of how these things that have yet to happen are going to affect me, I'm playing myself. I'm playing myself, man. I'm better off just looking at what's in front of me, tending to it. And in my life, right now, that means I'm trying to get this business off the ground, some heavy blues metal, keep ripping, etc. I got my hands in a bunch of pots, still making music, still doing this podcast, still lifting my weights, still playing my guitars. I need to really dial in my nutrition. I got my coaching website is up live now. Y'all can go to keeprippin.com. You want to work with me. I won't have anyone doing squats until my back is right. So I can't be a hypocrite. But I'm worried about what's good for me instead of thinking constantly about what's bad for me. And I feel pretty locked in right now, man. It's a series of things that are kind of concurrent trails almost. That's the thing about flow state. Sometimes it's hard to get into it. Sometimes it's hard to really actually lock in and be in what they call alignment. But once you're aligned, things just kind of start shaping up. But it's your duty, your task, and your obligation at that point to stay in that aligned position. One little deviation might not knock you off the track, not entirely, but a small deviation will yield to a larger one. And then, you start losing ground quick, and then it's hard to get back onto it. You're playing catch up. I think in life, in my life, you know, sobriety is a big deal because it frames my present tense in a way that I'm playing catch up for all those years I was drunk. You know what I mean? Straight up, just wasted time. And it's one of those things, when you look back at, do you say, "Oh, I'm glad for it"? I don't know that it's wise to say you're glad for times of adversity or trials, self-induced or otherwise. It's kind of silly to say I'm glad it happened. But you can look at, You can look at it for what it is. You can acknowledge it for what it actually is. You don't got to be glad that it happened. Many of us who go through stretches of tough times for whatever reason, by whatever means, none of us are glad in the midst of it, obviously. But it's almost like a cheap kind of throwaway. Well, I'm glad that it happened. It was necessary, probably. Very likely it was the only way that it could have happened. It's something they say in the rooms, in the AA rooms and stuff. It took what it took to get you here. And that's true. And you can acknowledge that. You can acknowledge that with like a degree of severity and then be okay with it. You can be at peace with it. But that's not the same as I'm glad that it happened. No, no, no. I don't think they're the same thing at all. So for me, it's like, like I said, worry about what's in front of me, build onwards. I'm reading this book right now. It's called Learned Optimism. It's the very same book that gave me a test that told me I was mildly depressive and rather pessimistic. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. You know, maybe that explains the fascination with stoicism. Maybe it explains the need to cope with my lackluster job through a podcast. Maybe it explains this thing in me that wants to break away from what I perceive to be normal, you know, crummy job and boring life or whatever. Not that, I would say my job can be very crummy, but my life ain't boring. But it ain't what it should be either, you know. Maybe it's a sense of cope and trying to just not be so pessimistic and well, I mean, whatever, dude, it is what it is. Because now I'm oriented in the present tense towards the future. And there's all types of things they say about pessimists and depressed people, but it ain't really that important. As I read that book more and more, the point that the guy kind of gets to, Marty Spieligman is the author. Pretty sure that's his name. I can't pronounce his last name well. I'm pretty sure his name's Martin. Um, the whole crux of it is how do we like kind of from a scientific, psychological, and clinical angle, how do we assess our autonomy with things? I totally ate those words. My fault. The question is, how do we assess our autonomy? What is helplessness? What is, what are those things in the human experience? Where do we learn them from? Is it all childhood? Evidently, it is. you know, I would say we're born with a nature. There's a nature to being a human being. That includes physical things, that includes spiritual things, that includes things of the intellect and things of the will. All that stuff is real. And we're born with a certain nature contained in us. But then the nurture is the other half, So as we're nurtured or misnurtured, yeah, it's going to affect the machinery of the brain, which is you're going to carry that the rest of your life. And it changes, it ebbs and flows. You can get into it and tinker with it, change your own machinery. Absolutely. I don't think some people are conflicted with it is when you say it is what it is. Well, it is what it is until it isn't. That's always a thing. That's always a thing too. The thing that in this book he talks about, the main contributing factor, not determining factor per se, but the contributing factor towards a sense of helplessness or pessimism or depression is what he calls explanatory styles. And that people learn different explanatory styles. And that's the main, so he argues, um, your explanatory style is what's going to determine your level of optimism versus pessimism, or enthusiasm versus depression, all those things. And that's a fascinating thing, the explanatory style, which ties back into something I think is just true, and that the main guiding principle of our lives is our stories. It's the stories we tell ourselves. It's our framing. It's the way we frame our existence. If I'm waking up every day telling myself that I ain't nothing, it subsequently follows that everything's going to lack afterwards. I ain't nothing. So what are you going to do? Attempt to add things onto the foundational nothing and expect to have good feelings or good rewards or good follow ups or anything? That don't make no sense at all. But if you wake up every day and think, I'm worth something, I'm worth a lot, as a matter of fact. In fact, I'm the man. And you ain't, if you're not posturing, if you're not just putting on airs, if you're not just, saying it for the sake of saying it, attempting to fake it till you make it, which some people can do. Maybe there's a time and a place for that. But if you're coming at it with a real genuine actual like place and you really feel it and you're in alignment with that, then it follows that everything else follows suit. And that's going to be the bedrock of the story that you tell yourself the rest of the day. So then when something goes wrong, when the inevitable failure in any endeavor appears, your explanatory style is what's going to determine kind of how you take it. We can read all the stoicism all day. We can read all the self help all day, all the personal development all day. But if something goes wrong and you go back to a refrain that is built into you, I'm very guilty of this, where something goes wrong and I'm like, man, I'm a retard. I'm stupid. I ain't going to, again. That's what this guy in the book, he calls it like a pervasive. There's a pervasive and permanent element to the explanatory style. Whereas the other side would be a temporary and fleeting, maybe not in those exact words, but if something goes wrong, I believe you got to own it, right? You got to be accountable to it, right? That's, something goes wrong, it's probably your fault. This is Jocko 101, extreme owner, good. Just expect that it's your fault. Fair enough. So when does that go too far? Can it go too far? Maybe not too far. Maybe it's not even on a metric like that. But maybe if that's how you talk to yourself and it's so internalized and so just built into the fiber of how you think, operate, and act, yeah, it makes sense then. That makes a lot of sense. If I can look at my own explanatory styles, not to offload responsibility, not to delegate my shortcomings to somebody else, but, say I go to work today, I go to the burger joint, there's a bunch of nonsense going on, a bunch of petty, childish, goofy, bilingual dramatics and personal issues that whatever that we all just got to sit in all day. We all just got to deal with it because that's what grown men do is we deal with things that way. Just be passive aggressive. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of just goofy, beneath me type things, in my opinion. So what do I walk into that with? Is it just like, they're being dumb? F it, I'm over it. That's what an optimism could arguably say. The extension of that is that the detached from reality delusional optimist, nothing's ever their fault. Think of those people. I think of people I know like that where, man, nothing's ever your fault, huh? Like you just like everything you do is perfect. You got the Midas touch on everything. You can't make any mistake. Wow, how do you do it? How did God bless you to be so talented and capable that nothing that goes wrong has anything to do with you? It's incredible. It looks like delusion when I see it, or just blatantly shipping the blame somewhere else. But those people tend to be pretty optimistic, though, don't they? They tend to have a pretty much like a better attitude. Maybe not all of them, but it's just things I'm thinking about. As I read that book, which puts the duty on me, taking it from what I'm thinking in my head to the next, 2, 3, 5 feet in front of me, my domain of immediate influence. I gotta we just gonna, to me and all of us, none of us are that different. It's the stories we tell ourselves. It's the framing, the way we frame ourselves in relation to the world around us and how we move through it. The pervasiveness of something. And if something's going to be pervasive, where it just gets into every thought is kind of etched, tinted with this way of thinking. Thus, it's pervasive. We got to try and change our minds and change our opinions and change our convictions to make those good things. It's not easy, but I found that very insightful as I read this book. If my pessimism is rooted in this chronic story I'm telling myself or whatever, yeah, man, it's time to claim some authority on that. Authority, the root word of authority is authorship, authorial intent, be the author of our own stories. And I guess that starts somewhere up in here. Learned optimism, it's called. Yeah, man. And in a world where it's all just pessimism and cynicism and nihilism and all the other isms, especially the autism just drilled into your mind. Yeah, we got to learn some optimism out here. Be above it. That's what I'm thinking about today. You know what I mean? a fine Wednesday contemplative piece as I walk around my neighborhood with my weighted vest on. Not too bad though. Sun is out. Life is good once I let it be. Life is busy, all with good things, hopefully. You know, a lot of people talk about how being busy isn't the benchmark of achieving. Well, yeah, fair enough. Because busyness and accomplishment aren't the same thing. But man, if you're trying to accomplish something, you better get busy. That's what I think on a fine Wednesday morning. I got this other book. I haven't really opened this in a while. I got The Bed of Procrustes by Nassim Taleb. I like to open this. This is just a book of aphorisms. I've done it once or twice on here. I'll just open it to a random page and pick one. I opened it to a random page and picked one as soon as I started this stream when I was playing my music. So here's what I got. Here's a parting thought for today from Mr. Nassim Taleb. Here he goes. He says, they think that intelligence is about noticing things that are relevant, detecting patterns. In a complex world, intelligence consists in ignoring things that are irrelevant, avoiding false patterns, which basically is to say, F all that nonsense, dude. That's the smart move. That's the smart move. What's popular right now? Retard maxing is popular now. It's breaking through. It's breaking through to the mainstream. I didn't coin that term. I learned it early on, though. That's what it says, man. That's the truth. That's the truth of the matter. Notice things that are irrelevant. That could be what's on the television. That could be what's on Instagram. That could be what's on TikTok or Twitter or whatever. That doesn't make you smart. It's not the mark of an intelligent man. Notice instead that it's unintelligent and therefore irrelevant. And that goes right to the outside and the inside, man. If you got this jacked up story about yourself and you keep telling yourself, might not even be based in truth. Just assume it's fake. Just assume it's the whisperings of the enemy in your mind and say, man, it's irrelevant. Onwards only. Anyway, that's what I got. I'm out of here. I got to go rip a gym session. Thank you guys for chilling, hanging out with me on a fine Wednesday morning. BS with Hannas, live on YouTube, unscripted, sometimes scaffolded by a couple books in front of me. You can find this on YouTube at BS with Hannas. You like the show, subscribe. You really like it, hit that Patreon link. Whatever. All the links are in the description down there. You want to find some music, NikkiBHannas.com, NikkiBHannas.bandcamp.com, Nikki B. Hannas on all streaming services for some heavy blues metal. You want to get on my program, help me get into business, say the word, man. I need to start building up clients so I can do cool, awesome, righteous things with my life instead of flipping burgers. But I digress. KeepRippin.com for that. You like the merch, you like the message, want to support the message, heavybluesmetal.com. I think that's all the plugs. Are there any more plugs? Nah, we good. I'm out. Happy Wednesday. One love. Keep it real. Keep ripping. Peace.